of welcoming all of you to this webinar session. It is the first of two sessions on the e-waste generation and the results and the findings of the e-waste global monitor report. This presentation or this live event is part of a series to introduce the content of the e-waste challenge MOOC, which was launched again in February 2020 in a new format. The MOOC is, or this MOOC in particular, is a cooperation of the EIT Climate KIC, the Basel, Rotterdam and Stockholm Convention Secretariat, the Catholic University of Leuven in Belgium, the International Telecommunications Union, the World Health Organization, the EIT Raw Materials Academy, and the World Resources Forum. So all these partners contributed content and materials to enrich the MOOC and present the many aspects they are creating the challenge and the solutions and the issues around e-waste generation. In particular, this MOOC will try to tackle environmentally sound management of hazardous chemicals and waste, cleaner production processes to minimize the use and emissions of hazardous waste and hazardous substances. This MOOC will introduce issues related to the protection of human health, communities, and the environment from the impact of hazardous waste, and also will discuss the climate change aspects related to the collection and or the non-collection of e-waste. Then this MOOC has new section on design, on prevention by design, on circular economy, mitigation, adaptation activities to lower the impact on climate change and on natural resources and on human health and in general on the environment. But what is e-waste? Here you have some examples of e-waste types and how e-waste is classified also in the Global E-Waste Monitor report. For example, e-waste are temperature exchange equipment, screens, lamps, large equipment, small equipment, and small IT items. And why do we need to act now on e-waste? As you will see from the e-waste monitor report, the risk associated to the emission of hazardous substances in e-waste is very important. Some substances such as lead, arsenic, but also brominated flame retardant, some of which are persistent organic pollutants, and other substances. It's really very hazardous. Not only, but normally e-waste is openly burnt, and this can create dioxins, furans, and these are some of the worst toxics for human health and the environment, creating cancer, generating cancer, and also other problems, hormonal problems. As Vanessa will introduce in her presentation, almost 53.6 million metric tons of e-waste were generated in 2019. And the estimates, as you will see, are for this trend to be a growing one in the future. E-waste is also an opportunity because of the valuable materials included, and in the Global E-Waste Monitor report, the valuable materials included in the e-waste generated in 2019 was estimated as being 57 billion euros. And Vanessa will tell us more about these figures. in a few minutes. Who is this MOOC for? This MOOC is for students, for e-waste recycling managers, recyclers in general, for policymakers, for also environmental managers, for healthcare operators, and for all those who would like to learn more about the e-waste challenge and the issues associated with this waste stream. The MOOC includes 35 hours of online learning. It can be blended with classroom courses and is not time limited. It's always available online, and the students or the participants can take the MOOC at their own pace. It is suggested to take it along 8 weeks with 6-7 hours of study and learning work every week. The MOOC offers activity-based learning, so there are many exercises and many possibilities to put in the context of the participant the information and also the tools and the findings that can be found on the MOOC materials. And now a little summary of all the courses and an explanation of how the material is organized. Currently, the MOOC is organized in 5 mini courses, which are standalone, so it can be taken separately or together, one after the other, or the most interesting for the audience could be taken before or the other. There is no order. But there are certificates that can be obtained. In particular, the certificates are obtained after having followed courses 1 and 2, then course 3, then course 4, and course 5. 1 and 2 are grouped together and are necessary to read about the e-waste challenge and to have a global overview about the issues and the problems. So we now see what is in detail included in each course. Courses 1 and 2 provide an introduction to e-waste, issues, impacts, and solutions. And today's lecture is part of these 2 courses. These 2 courses are for a general audience and for students also in schools or in universities. Course 3 is focusing on e-waste and children health. It is basically focusing on the health impact and especially the youth and children. And the target audience for this course is health operators. But of course, not only, also people who are interested in particular to deeply understand which are the hazardous substances in e-waste and how human health is affected, what are the exposure pathways, the chronic exposure diseases, and also the exposure to very high concentrations in small periods. Course 4 is focusing on reducing e-waste by design, standards, business and policies, and the ESM of e-waste. The audience, again, is very large. It's for policymakers, for ITU operators and policymakers, and for environmental policy makers. Course 5 is on inclusive and sustainable e-waste recycling, and it is targeted to the recyclers, to those who are working with the collection, the recycling, the recovery of materials, and are exposed to e-waste and may be exposed to not good practices or best practices. So this course is about best practices and worst practices also in e-waste recycling. So join us on the MOOC and help advocate solutions for the challenge of e-waste. And before I finish my presentation, I want to tell you that next year the MOOC will change platform. So we'll be connecting with all of you to communicate a new web link, which will be automatically uploading when you click on the current link. Thank you very much. And now I give the floor to Vanessa Forti for her presentation.
Thank you very much, Francesca, and thank you everybody for joining this meeting. Thank you also for inviting me to present at this webinar. So I will now share my screen, and I will give a presentation for around 20 to 30 minutes. And please feel free to ask questions at the end of the presentation, because we will have time for that. So do you see my screen correctly, Dan? Can you confirm this? And do you hear me well?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, thank you so much. So indeed, as Francesca was already introducing, I will give a presentation with regarding the Global E-Waste Monitor 2020. This is a monitor that was published this year in July, and it's a joint effort of various organizations. One is the organization where I work, which is the so-called Cycle Program, which stands for Sustainable Cycles. It's under United Nations University and now transitioning to UNITAR. And it was a collaboration also with ITU, International Telecommunication Union, and the International Waste Solid Association. Just as a general background for you, the Cycle Program, which is at the moment under United Nations University, is in charge of quantification and research related to e-waste and other problematic waste streams. The UN is academic arm of the UNU is an academic arm of United Nations, while UNITAR is also providing courses, e-learning courses, and is focused also a lot on training. So the presentation that I'm making today is also very much related to UNITAR main goals and activities. So what do we do at Cycle? Just for your general background, we actually focus on quantification of electronic waste, but we do not only limit our research to electronic waste, but we also touch on battery waste, for example, and other problematic waste streams, such as plastic, batteries, and so on, and mercury as well, and critical raw materials. So we so far produced several publications. The one I will talk about today is the Global E-Waste Monitor 2020, but you can see at the bottom that in 2017 we published a second edition of the Global E-Waste Monitor, and the first edition was published in 2015. So the aim of this publication is really to give an update of e-waste quantities and flows every 2 years, because of course e-waste is indeed a challenging waste stream, let's say, and it changes also very fast during the year. So collection rates increase, and also the generation of e-waste we have observed that increases quite rapidly. Then we also publish the e-waste statistic guidelines, which are guidelines to help countries and governments to really help in producing national e-waste data. And then we also conducted several other studies. For example, the Person Import is a project that looked at illegal flows of e-waste entering Nigeria a few years ago. This is just to mention some of the projects we are involved in. But we also do capacity building and trainings. So we have several webinars, but also academies. So far it was mainly face-to-face. We also provide policies, advices, and especially this was related to the work the European Commission did with regards to the WE directive. So there we had a role in advising which category, which electronics should be included in the directive. And we also work in several other partnerships with the overall aim to, let's say, tackle the e-waste, global e-waste challenge. So maybe just a few words about me before starting. So for you to know, I'm Vanessa Forti. I'm a program associate at Cycle. And so among, let's say, all these activities, I'm in charge mainly of e-waste quantification, and I was the lead author of the Global E-Waste Monitor 2020, and I'm also in charge of capacity building and trainings, and I participated in several trainings in developing countries, especially in Latin America. I see that many of you are from today joining from Latin America, and also from I was also doing a lot of capacity building in the Eastern African Community region, so also African countries. So today I will give you an introduction of the monitor, of the Global E-Waste Monitor 2020. I will quickly touch on what is electronic waste, and I will also give a bit of a background of how we calculate e-waste data and e-waste statistics, and how it is important also to compile and to collect data. I will touch on e-waste legislation, on the potential of e-waste recycling in a circular economy, on e-waste impact on health and environment, and then we will draw conclusions, and you will have the possibility to ask questions at the end. So this is in a nutshell what is included in the Global E-Waste Monitor, because the publication is actually the most comprehensive publication that talks about e-waste challenges around the globe. So we touch on SDGs, but we also on legislative developments and on how e-waste, let's say, how e-waste relates to circular economy. So as I mentioned before, this is a publication that was conducted in partnership with ITU and with ISWA, and it was kindly also, WHO also kindly supported by providing some useful information on the relation of e-waste and health. So what is e-waste and what is EEE and WE? So the EEE stands for electric and electronic equipment, and it includes a wide range of products with circuitry or electrical component with a power or battery supply. So basically everything you can think of that has a battery or a plug, is to consider an electronic product, and sooner or later this product will become waste. So just to mention some, but Francesca already touched on this, so I will be quick. But anything that you can think of that falls under the 6 categories are to be considered electronic products. So if you think of temperature exchange equipment, which is air conditioners, fridges, and so on, or screens and monitors, lamps is also part of electronic products, and large equipment such as washing machines, ovens, and so on. Or small equipment, we all have a lot of small equipment and small IT at home, because we all own multiple USB sticks, perhaps, multiple mobile phones and keyboards and mouses, and all this is contributing to the increase of consumption and also increase of e-waste generation. So, a few words about the global e-waste key statistics. So, these are our funding from the Global E-Waste Monitor, from our research. We research that higher level of disposable incomes, urbanization, industrialization, are contributing to the increase of consumption of electronic equipment. So this so far has grown by 2.5 million tons annually, which is quite a high amount, especially if we think that the growing consumption of electronic products lead to an increase also of e-waste generation, of course, because sooner or later, as we said, the electronic products will become waste, and we need to find a way to recycle or to manage the e-waste in a proper way. And e-waste, according to our data and analysis, has grown with 9.2 million tons since 2014. Of course, this growth of e-waste generation is not only linked to higher consumption, but also linked to a shorter life cycles and few repair options that we are having nowadays. So if you think of electric products, especially an easy link would be your mobile phone, most of the time is very hard to recycle or to repair it even. And sometimes it's even cheaper to buy a new phone instead of repairing your old one. And these are all things that are contributing to the growth of e-waste generation, as you can imagine. And this, as a conclusion, then we can say that e-waste in 2019 was 53.6 million tons in all countries of the world, and this corresponds to 7.3 kilograms per capita. So this is only for 1 year, imagine, only for 2019. But we also noticed that with our modeling, that e-waste will actually increase in the coming years, and we estimated that in 2030, the e-waste will hit 74.7 million tons. So there is no chance that the e-waste will decrease in the coming years. Maybe the only category that will decrease slightly is the screens and monitors, as you can see here, because they are the only category that is showing a slight decrease over the years. And this is maybe related to the miniaturization of electrical and electronic products, meaning that those products are becoming every day or every year smaller and lighter. So if you think of the old CRT monitors and screens, they were very heavy. And nowadays we have instead smaller or lighter screens. And this is why, one of the reasons why this category is the only one who's showing a slight decrease. But how did we calculate the e-waste generated? How did we came up with this number for 2019? So in brief, we analyzed production and trade data, which is data that every country has, and we used as a main source the Comtrade database. It's a database where you can see all sales of products, not only electric, but all kind of products in HS codes. And we analyzed then the production and trade, so imports and exports for 181 countries. We analyzed 220 HS codes, which are related to electric and electronic products. We did it for a time series from 95 to 2018. And this enabled us to come up with sales of electric products per year, per country, for all countries that we analyzed. And this is what we call the market entry. So meaning we were able to understand how much is sold every year in every country. And then we linked this data to lifetime of each product. So we know from previous studies how long every product lasts. For example, we know that a mobile phone can last approximately 4 to 5 years. And then by linking those two databases, then we were able to predict when the mobile phone, for example, that was sold in 2015 will become waste. When and in which region, in which country? So of course, the mobile phone that is sold in 2015 will become waste in 2020. And this is how we came up with the number for the world, just for your background and understanding. So we also analyzed data for previous years. Indeed, in 2014, the global e-waste generated was estimated to be 44.4 million tons, but this grew with 9.2 million tons since 2014. So in 2019, the number grew to 53.6. And how are we performing? How is the world performing in terms of e-waste collection? So in 2014, the collection was 17%, and in 2019, we estimated that the formal e-waste documented to be, collected and recycled was 17.4%. So there is a slight increase in the percentage. You can notice a bit more increase by considering the actual amount in weight that has increased, so 1.8 million tons since 2014. So in general, there is an increase in collection of e-waste and an increase in recycling. However, it's still not satisfactory, because if we look at the growth of collection and recycling is only 1.8, and comparing this to the growth of e-waste, 9.2, there is still a big gap, which the entire world has to compensate for or increase the collection to try to keep up with this growth of e-waste generation. So we also analyzed the flows of e-waste. So by also analyzing waste collection and recycling, we also looked at what is the gap and where the rest of the e-waste ends up. And here we have a lot of question marks, as you can imagine, because if we say that only 17.4 is formally collected and recycled, then we actually don't know what happens with the rest. And this is the biggest problem and the biggest, message of this global e-waste monitor, that we need to increase the collection of data in order to also analyze and understand what happens with the rest. So we know from other existing studies as well that a small portion can end up in waste bins. This is estimated to be 0.6 million tons and is mainly happening in European countries, because the study was focused on European countries. But we also understood that this is a behavior that mainly happens in high-income countries, where, for example, the consumer doesn't want to bother or doesn't know that should dispose the headset, for example, or small items in the proper collection point. So they just throw it in the normal waste bin. And this is by doing sampling. This study was able to understand that this amount can end up in waste bin in high-income countries. But the rest, we actually don't know very well. So e-waste is likely to be dumped, traded, or recycled in a non-environmentally sound way. We also made sort of analysis per region and per continent to understand and see how the different how different is the e-waste generation per continent, and also how different is the e-waste collection and recycling. From here, you can notice that most of the e-waste in terms of tons or weight is generated in Asia with 24.9 million tons. Of course, this is quite straightforward, because Asia is also the most populous continent with China and India, definitely. So when we look at the kilograms per capita, the kilograms per capita for Asia, they're quite low compared to Europe and Americas. indeed you see that Europe is instead the continent that generates the most in terms of kilograms per capita. And then comes America. With regards to e-waste formally collected and recycled, Europe is the region that is doing better in terms of recycling, with 42.5% of e-waste documented to be collected and recycled. And other continents, they are still improving, but the gap is still quite huge compared to Europe. We need to stress here that the data coming from Europe are actually data, well-structured data. This is also why it was very easy to collect data on e-waste formally collected and recycled. For other continents and other countries, it could be that e-waste is recycled, and it could be that it's recycled in a formal way even. However, governments are hardly collecting those data. And therefore, these data were not considered in this study because we only rely on governmental data. And this is another message of the monitor, that we need to stress and we need to improve also the collection of data at country level. Because monitoring is definitely very important for developing laws and also for managing the waste in a proper way. So if we look at the Americas, I just made an extraction for the Americas because today we expected many participants from that region. So we see that, of course, the North America is northern part of America with Canada and US are the countries that generate the most of e-waste per capita. In Southern America, Argentina and Brazil also are positioned quite soon after USA and Canada. And with the flags here, the flags represent the countries that are currently having a legislation on e-waste management. And the countries without a flag are the ones that are still maybe in the processing of passing a law or have not yet considered a legislation. So why measuring e-waste is so important, and why do we stress so much on this? In part, we mentioned it already. Definitely monitoring the quantities of and flows of e-waste is essential to quantify the magnitude of e-waste challenge, to establish priorities for policymakers or set appropriate collection and recycling targets, and allocate also adequate financial resources. This is key because without proper measurement and without proper data, this sort of solutions are really hard to manage and to get to a result. So what we did so far as Cycle, my program, and also in other organizations which are part of the GSP, so is the Global E-Waste Statistic Partnership. We conducted several e-waste statistic workshops between 2017 and 2020 in different regions in the world, and this was mainly aimed at helping countries in generating their own e-waste data and their own e-waste statistics. So far, we have trained more than 361 people, and more than 60 countries participated in e-waste statistic workshops. And out of these 69 countries have started compiling national e-waste statistics using internationally recognized methodology. So what we use also for the production of the monitor. So about legislation, very quickly. There have been also developments in terms of legislation since the publication of the Monitor 2017. 11 more countries have established a national policy, regulation, or legislation. So the coverage has increased. 71% of the world population is now covered with a legislation, policy, or regulation. But it should be mentioned that the coverage sometimes may be misleading because some countries, have policies that are not legally binding. So even if a policy is in place, but if the policy or the law is not enforced, then there is little improvement in practice in the country. So then definitely having a law is not the only thing that matters, but enforcement is definitely very important too. Indeed, across Africa and Asia, we, thanks to a study of GSMA, we found out that 19 countries have a legally binding legislation, but only five have a e-waste policy, which is, again, non-legally binding, and 31 countries have a policy in development. So you see that the policy and legislation aspect is still very dynamic, and we are not there yet, meaning that there's a lot of room for improvement. So what about Latin America? If we can again extract some information for Latin America. We noticed that the regulatory advances in Latin America are taking time, meaning that some developments where we saw that some developments since the last monitor, and this refers mainly to countries like Mexico, Costa Rica, Colombia, and Peru, because they are the ones who seem to be leading forces in the region for environmentally sound e-waste management. And while Brazil and Chile are establishing right now the basis from which to start with an implementation of a framework for e-waste. What's next? Few words about the potential of e-waste in a circular economy. Francesca has already introduced this topic to you, and also it's very relevant to relate e-waste to circular economy, because e-waste not only contains valuable materials, but it also contains hazardous metals. And hazardous components and materials, sorry. So in this publication, we analyzed the material composition of e-waste for the elements that are highlighted in red, which are both precious, some are critical, and some are non-critical, like iron and aluminum, but they also are present in a high percentages in e-waste. That's why we wanted to also quantify the amount of aluminum and iron used in electronic products. And we found out that, well, in total, the potential value of the analyzed raw materials in e-waste in 2019 was $57 billion US, meaning that this is the value of the raw materials embedded in e-waste that was generated in 2019. So we also analyzed how much materials are in e-waste in 2019 is 25 million tons. And by doing comparison to the amount of materials that are necessary to produce new electronics that were sold in 19, we were able to estimate this much of material will be needed for the production of new electronics, meaning that between 39 million tons and 25, there is a gap of 14 million tons which of materials or virgin materials that we need to extract raw in order to compensate, in order to add it to what it would be ideally recovered from the e-waste generated in 2019. However, this whole analysis is done on an ideal 100% recycling base, but this is not the truth, this is not what is happening at the moment at world level. Indeed, at the moment, we're only able to collect 17.4%, and with the current recycling rate, we were able to recycle 4 million tons of raw materials and recover approximately $10 billion US. However, with the rest of e-waste that we don't know where it ends up, we also released into the environment 50 tons of mercury, 71 kilotons of brominated flame retardants, and we also emitted in the atmosphere approximately 100 million tons of CO2 equivalent that was coming from improper recycling of air conditioners and fridges. So, at last, I wanted to touch on the e-waste impact on health and the environment. As also Francesca introduced earlier, and you will maybe hear more from WHO in the next sessions of this MOOC, but e-waste is also dangerous for health and for the human health and for the environment. And it is dangerous when the e-waste is not recycled in a proper manner, let's say. So most of the times in informal recycling, the e-waste is handled in under inferior standards conditions, and therefore children may be affected because they may be ingesting contaminated dust or playing with dismantled electronics, and or again the ones who are working in the field may be inhaling fumes from burning of wires and cooking circuit boards. Pregnant women working as recyclers have also proven to be heavily affected by the toxic fumes. And the community that are also living nearby are also heavily affected by this improper management of e-waste. Same happens for the environment, because most of the times the acid is used to remove gold, and the acid is dumped into the rivers. And of course, as you can imagine, the dumping of acid or any leaching of substances into the ground or river or water then impacts heavily the environment. And it was several studies were conducted, and it was found out that e-waste, the improper management can cause adverse birth outcomes, skin diseases, cancer, DNA damage, and adverse respiratory effects, just to mention some. So with this, I would like to conclude now. I just it was a lot of information for you to process, but I'm also happy in the next minutes to answer any question you may have. So just few last takeaway messages of the GEM 2020. So the collection and proper management of e-waste should be promoted throughout appropriate legislative instruments. It is crucial, according to us, to speed up the regulatory advances and improve the enforcement at global level. And is also very essential to increase the officially documented 17.4% of the global e-waste collection and recycling rate, especially in view of the rapid growth of this waste stream, because as we showed earlier, this is expected to increase rapidly in the coming years, and also in view of the recovery of materials towards closed material loops. And it is also very essential to improve the recycling in order to reduce the use of virgin materials, because this can also cause impacts on health and on the environment, especially when in this small artisanal minings. And we also encourage, at last, decision makers to continue and further increase their activities to measure and monitor e-waste. Because as we just explained in this presentation, monitoring e-waste generation and recycling is key for the development of policies and for the management or development of a waste management system. So, thank you so much for being present, and I thank you for your attention from myself and also the other authors of the Global E-Waste Monitors. Thank you, and I would pass the floor to you or any questions that you